Good morning, everyone. Dan here for the Mentor Development Team. And today I'd like to guide you through updating your Mentor UT to revision 2.0. Now, the 2.0 update is a pretty major update of nearly every programmable part of the Mentor. So our update process is going to be a little more complex than it usually is. You're not just going to go to the updates page of the settings panel and select a MUP file and run that update. We're going to be getting into a number of reboots of the system. It's going to involve using a keyboard and some other accessories that the team has distributed to you. So a couple of the key parts here. If we switch to camera view for a second, you're going to need a USB keyboard, just a basic USB keyboard. The team will have sent you a powered USB hub. It may look a little bit different than the one I have here, but it will be powered. So this line runs to a wall wart type power supply. Make sure you have that plugged in with the keyboard and the USB memory stick. That can put a pretty good load on the USB port of the Mentor. So you'll plug the port into USB line from the port. We'll plug into the USB port of the Mentor. I would disconnect any probes that you have attached to the Mentor for this process. Just have your digital interface module in. You want to make sure your Mentor is connected to the charger, to AC power, and you want to start with at least a 50% charge on your battery. Okay, the 50% isn't critical, but you want a good charge on the battery so that if anything would happen to the power, you have plenty of power to carry it through the entire update process. Okay. So you'll have a memory stick in your kit. That will be a bootable memory stick with the Linux operating system, BIOS update, and all the software updates that are needed for the instrument itself. Okay. So again, you'll plug the USB from the hub into the instrument. Memory stick plugs into the hub. Keyboard plugs into the hub, and you're all set to start. So we're going to upgrade 4 major parts of the system, or there's 4 major steps to the update. So the first is to boot to the BIOS setup panel, and we're going to change a few things to get the BIOS into a position to accept the other updates and to be able to boot from the memory stick. The first step of updating from the memory stick is going to be to update the microcontroller bootstrap loader. There have been some issues noticed with the dialog chip on certain probes when plugged into the Mentor to phaser adapter. This bootstrap loader update takes care of those issues. After that, we're going to update the operating system, basically re-image the entire hard drive of the instrument. We're going to update the operating system, the FPGA, microcontroller, pretty much everything programmable in the instrument gets updated. We will shut down one more time after that, and the next step is to update the BIOS. So after each one of these steps, the instrument will turn off, and we'll start it back up by hitting the power switch and hitting the F5 key on the keyboard to be able to control booting to the USB memory stick. So with that, we're going to pause for a second while I readjust the camera here a little bit. One step I want to show before we do that. To get started on each one of these steps, we're going to turn the instrument on, and as soon as we turn it on, we're going to begin hitting the F5, the function 5 key, repeatedly. And what that does is gets the instrument's attention that we want to boot into the BIOS setup. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to power on. I'm going to hit the F5 key. And I just keep hitting that till the screen wakes up and it says entering boot menu. Okay? And at this point now I'm going to pause for a second, readjust the camera so that we're focused more tightly on the screen. I apologize, I can't use the regular remote desktop feature to capture this for you because we're working at the BIOS level quite a bit, and I just don't have that remote feature available. So again, we'll pause here for a minute while I readjust the camera, and then we'll... All right, I've worked to try to get the exposure and the distance of the camera set well enough that we can see what's going on the screen. So as you noticed, we booted the instrument for the first time, hitting the F5 key to get to the BIOS setup menu. When we first come in here, we want to get to the app menu, because what we're going to do is change a couple of settings in the BIOS. So I hit the Tab key on the keyboard to switch over to the app menu. You'll notice Setup is selected. I'm going to hit Enter on Setup. When I get to this screen, to the main setup screen, the first thing I want to do is hit the down arrow key a couple of times to select the Boot Features section of this menu. And there are a couple of things that I want to check here. I've already been into this instrument once, so I'm not going to actually change these. But one of the first things that we need to look at is on boot features. We want to come down here to where it says UEFI boot. That needs to be enabled. Boot priority should be UEFI first. And those are the important things to look at on this menu. So now I hit Escape to go back to the main. I will hit the Tab key, or actually the right arrow key, to go to the Advanced menu. I'm going to hit the down arrow key to this feature down here by itself that says OS selection. On your instrument, that will most likely say Windows. You'll hit the space, hit the space bar to get Linux. Okay. Then we're going to go back up to the item that says South Cluster Configuration. We're going to hit Enter to enter that. On the South Cluster Configuration, we're going to go down to SATA drives, SATA drives. All right. We're going to want to make sure that chipset SATA is set to enable, and where it says chipset SATA mode, that must be AHCI. All right, by default, that will be a different setting, not IDE. We want it set to AHCI. Okay. At this point, we've set up everything that's important in the BIOS setup. So we're going to hit the Escape key several times. So once to get back to the Advanced menu, once to get back to the top, one more time to get to the Exit menu, and we're going to select Exit Saving Changes. And we'll get a confirmation message, so we hit Enter again, and the instrument will turn off. Okay, so at this point we've set up our BIOS to be able to proceed with the rest of the update. So now we'll turn it on, we'll hit F5, continue to hit F5 on the keyboard again. We're going to keep hitting F5 until we get to entering the boot menu, and we get the boot menu. So this time we want to use the down arrow key to select boot option number 2, the USB hard drive. So we'll select that, we'll hit enter, and we will give it a minute. And what will happen is the instrument will boot to an Ubuntu Linux operating system image directly off of the USB stick. So this takes a little bit of time to come up. We're fully booted. That process does take a minute or two to fully boot to the Linux desktop. So don't worry, the screen will go black several times during the process, but we clipped some of the dead time out of the video here so that we weren't sitting around looking at black screens. All right, so this is what the Linux desktop looks like. There's two controls on here. that are of interest to us right now. Down the left-hand edge is a taskbar, a little bit like a Windows taskbar. There's an icon with 3 gears on it, and that is the Mentor UT update. So we can either double click on the one that's out on the desktop or just give a single touch on the one on the taskbar. I like the single touch. If you have a mouse connected to the hub, you can use a mouse to click it, or you can just use your finger on the screen the way you would with other Mentor actions. So I'm going to touch the gear icon. You'll get a command window that pops up, and it will go through the process of updating the Bootstrap loader on the microcontroller. So you'll see some progress issued out in terms of lines of code, lines of the update file being processed. It'll count to 1830. And when it's all finished with the update process, you'll get a message that it's time to turn off. Okay? So the process has completed here. The last message at the bottom of the screen is warning, tap the shutdown icon to power off the unit, power it back on, and we're going to run through this process one more time. And the second time through, we will update all the hard drive image and all the other operating software of the instrument. So the power button is right below the gear icon. It's a standard power icon. We'll click that, and the instrument will go through a shutdown process. Okay, so the instrument has turned off, and we're going to go through our boot process one more time. So I turn it on. I begin hitting the F5 key, and I keep hitting the F5 key until the boot menu comes up. And just like last time, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select boot from the USB stick, hit enter, and we will wait approximately 2 minutes here again for the full boot process to take place. All right, we are back. That took, I guess, about 1.5 minutes. At this point, we're ready to install the new FPGA and reimage the hard drive, pretty much program all the rest of the programmable items that make up the Mentor. So again, we're going to touch that same gear icon that we did before. It's the same process. It just remembers that it's already done the Bootstrap loader and doesn't have to do that again. So now it'll launch through and do the rest of the instrument. So just like before, I'm going to touch the gear icon. Command line window pops up, and it begins the process of extracting the image file. And this process will take several minutes. So again, we'll give this time to work, clip that out of the video, and come back to it when it's complete. All right. The installation of all of the hard drive image and the FPGA are now complete. The final message showing at the bottom of the screen is cleanup complete, installation successful. Tap the shutdown icon to power off the unit. So just like before, we're going to tap the power icon. That process on my instrument took roughly 7 minutes to complete. So again, don't worry, you'll see steady progress, but just let the installation run until you get the installation successful. Tap the shutdown icon instruction at the bottom of the screen. So now we'll turn it off one more time. Just wait for the instrument to turn itself completely off. All right, and that shutdown process took quite a while, about a minute and a half on my machine. Please be patient, give it time to shut down. The instrument was not hung up. It was just going through an extended shutdown process. Now, the last step, we're going to update the BIOS. So one more time, I turn the instrument on. I hit the F5 key continuously to get the BIOS boot menu. And it says entering boot menu. Now this time, rather than booting from the from the USB stick, we're going to go all the way down to internal shell. And what we're going to do here is boot into the BIOS update utility, which will look at the USB memory stick, find a BIOS update, and install that. So I'm going to use the down arrow key to get to internal shell, enter to select it. It's going to boot and it'll give you some information and say press escape in so many seconds or any other key to continue. Don't hit any keys. Just let it boot into its update process. And as we see here, the BIOS is going through and installing its update. Okay, so at this point, we will just take a few seconds to allow the BIOS update to complete. This whole process only takes a minute, minute and a half, something like that. And when the BIOS update has completed, the instrument will turn off. Still have just a couple more sections to go here. All right. So at this point, the BIOS update has completed. The instrument's turned itself off. And we are essentially done with the update process. So I'm going to, now at this point, we can unplug our update rig and move that out of the way. And boot our instrument normally. And this is where you're going to see one of the huge improvements of the switch to the Linux operating system in the Mentor. You'll notice that from the push of the power switch to fully booted is going to happen in about 45 seconds. So you'll see a couple of splash screens. Trying to get our brightness adjusted here. Make it a little more legible. All right, and because we've done a complete installation of the hard drive and everything, the first thing that pops up is going to be the end user license agreement, just like a brand new instrument. So we'll hit the check button to accept that, right arrow for next. We get one more Mentor splash screen. And we boot to the desktop. Okay, so that first trip through takes a little bit longer than usual. till you accept the license agreement, but you'll find now that a complete boot of the instrument takes about 45 seconds. If we go into the settings panel, we look at our version information, you should see the software is now at 2.0. The microcontroller is 1.03 with a bootstrap loader of 2.017. Now, one important thing to note, the apps desktop at this point is blank. We are not installing any apps as part of the basic installation of the software. And any apps that you had on the instrument, any apps, settings files, data files, are going to be gone. All right. So it's very important to use the file manager before you start this process. Use the file manager to copy off any settings files, any data files, things like that, any reports, screen captures, anything that you've saved on the instrument that you want to preserve. You need to copy those off to a memory stick, keep them separately. Make sure you have installation files for any of the apps that you want to put back on. So at this point, you're ready to add your apps back, and you should be familiar with that process from the basic operation of the Mentor. That all works the way it did before, but you will start with pretty much a blank slate with the new software. So with that, we'll conclude the video. Again, I'm Dan Groninger for the entire Mentor UT development team. Thank you for choosing the Mentor, and thank you for working to update your Mentor to this latest state. Thanks.